I'd like to discuss some tools that we have in BU 204's doc sharing that will help you when you have a homework problem. Okay, let's begin with what a homework problem might look like. And here you see on the left side of the screen we have a problem. As a matter of fact, we have this same problem listed for you in doc sharing with a PowerPoint presentation on how to use the tool that I'm going to show you. Okay, so we have the how to analyze the supply and demand beef example. But what we want to look at today is the worksheet. So we're going to go ahead and load up this worksheet, and I've got it already, so let's minimize this. Okay, and I thought I had it already. There it is. Okay, so here's our supply and demand worksheet that we're going to be working with. Okay. And what we're going to do is answer these questions, and what I'd suggest is that you probably want to print a copy of this and then scribble on it as you are working through your homework problem before you're ready to put it in final paper form. So we'll do the same thing, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and start off. I want to know what the starting situation is, and invariably we start off with situation in equilibrium. So we know we have beef suppliers and we have U.S. consumers of beef. So let's go ahead and put in our demand curve for the U.S. Okay, so there is demand America. Okay, and then we have the suppliers of beef, the farmers that are growing the cattle. Okay, and we have their supply curve. We'll call that S. Okay. And again, we're talking about what is the starting situation. Well, the starting situation is we are going to have equilibrium, where supply and demand cross. That's going to give us a price of P1 and a quantity demanded and supplied of Q1. Okay? Now we want to know what the change in situation is. Well, the change in situation is the trade talks have opened up markets in China. So is this going to affect demand or supply? Well, we can see it's going to affect demand. Is it going to cause a movement along the demand curve or a shift of the curve? Well, remember, a movement along the demand curve only occurs if the problem tells you about price. So since it didn't mention price, the problem is it must deal with a shift of the curve. Okay? And then the question, well, we don't need to deal with question 5 because there is no movement. So then the question becomes number 6. Well, remember from Unit 3, the analysis, that we have some reasons why the demand curve would shift, and I'll just pop these here for you. And of course what our primary concern is that I'll come back up here to review. Okay. Do this right and come down here. Okay, that because we've now added China to the mix, that we actually have more consumers, and that's going to give us a shift to the right of the demand curve. So we would expect a new demand curve, as we see here, shifted to the right. Okay. And we'll just put this in a different color so we know it is a different demand curve. Okay. And this is for America plus China. Okay. And what is that going to cause to happen? Well, let's go ahead and get our colors here. So the suppliers see this shift of the demand curve in this direction as an increase in price. Okay? So that we're going to have a new price at P2. Okay? And at that higher price, the suppliers, the farmers, are willing to supply more beef, and that's equal to the total demand of America and China. Okay? So what we see is that we've had a change in equilibrium to the new equilibrium point, and that we end up with a higher price. Okay? Now our price is increased, and we have a higher quantity. Okay? So our total output has increased. And then it says, are there any special questions? Well, remember the last part of our question, part C, says what will happen to the price that U.S. consumers pay? Okay. Well, we come back and we look at the U.S. consumers by themselves, and what do they see? Well, the blue curve is theirs, and they see this high price, and at this higher price they're only willing to consume less than they were originally because the price has gone up. Okay? So now we have the basic understanding of the problem. Okay? We have the new increase in demand from China has increased the amount of demand. The suppliers saw that shift of the demand curve to the right as an increase in price. The farmers were willing to supply more beef at that higher price. Unfortunately, the American consumers by themselves saw that new price as much higher, and at the higher price the American consumers were willing to consume less beef than they were before China entered into the picture. Okay? We'll continue the analysis in another video in a few minutes.